Back and then we'll get started. Here comes our panelist now. Go ahead and get started. I want to introduce Scarlett to you. Everyone, please give Scarlett. Put your handphones in your bag. If you are in conversation or not here listening, please keep your voice down if you don't mind, so that we can enjoy Scarlett's presentation. Scarlett, when she told me what her presentation was, I had two reactions. The first one is, that's way too much to try to cover in a thesis. That was my first reaction. The second was, it's a bit schizophrenic, right? You're trying to talk about, is your thesis about China and BRI, or is it about sustainable renewable energy? And so, but she put it together. I didn't scare her away from it. She put it together and she did a really good job. So please welcome Scarlett. Here's her words. She says, "I would like to thank God for his everlasting guidance, my panelists, Mrs. Denise and Mr. Kim, for selecting my topic and hopefully being merciful to me. My advisor, Mr. Hans, and Mr. Strickland, for bearing the weight of all my frustrations writing this thesis, among many other things. My parents and teachers for always being there and strong for me, and my friends for always making me laugh and accompanying me until 3 a.m. so I don't fall asleep writing my thesis." Okay, very good. So once again, welcome, Scarlett. I'm going to set up the timer and I'll tell you when you can begin. All right, you can start whenever you're ready.
Hey everyone, let's take a selfie with my brand new Xiaomi. This phone just came straight from China. Oh, wait, hold on a second. My phone's dead. So I think it's time to charge it up, right? Well, stop. Did you know that charging your phone can be equivalent to burning the world? This is our harsh reality, that most of our energy sources still originate from fossil fuels, which has led to global warming. So we have to consider this question. Can the marvels of today's technology properly address a culture of progress, including a culture of preservation for our very planet? So let us all take a step back and reconsider our energy and technology habits to save the world from the impending crisis before it's too late. Climate change has emerged as a pressing concern ever since the 18th century Industrial Revolution, which brought about rapid advancements in machinery and technology. But as the modern world advances today, we are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels like coal and oil for energy generation and transportation. This has come at its cost. Fossil fuels are technically burned to be utilized, and this burning has caused greenhouse gas emissions, which traps heat inside the Earth's surface, making it as hot as it is now. This has caused global warming, and climate change has become a pressing reality for many. Severe environmental consequences, like droughts, extreme weather events, the exclusion of local communities, environmental consequences in coastal erosions and floods, the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem functions, and disturbances in agricultural productivity, making a threat to food security, has become the realities of many. So, considering the lives and landscapes lost, climate change threatens to mark Earth as an inhabitable place. But thankfully, the world is waking up to the urgency of the hour. The international community came together under the 2015 Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global temperature rise by 1.5 degrees Celsius. But saving the world requires more than just lofty promises. It demands action. We have to cut fossil fuel dependency and shift to another energy source, one that can endorse both cultures of progress and preservation. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the challenge of our 21st century, the transition to renewable energy. Initially, renewable energy refers to replenishable energy sources which are known for their environmentally friendly nature because they do not emit greenhouse gas emissions. So, by 2050, the world around us has committed a pledge to shift to renewable energy sources by 2050, utilizing sources such as solar, wind, and hydropower. But, like anything too good to be true, renewable energy transition has its socioeconomic, regulations, and technological cost, one which not all countries, especially developing countries that still struggle to maintain a stable government, provide their people with adequate employment, and give them a sense of food security, can barely afford. So this is where global leaders step in, such as China and its Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative has started in 2013 when President Xi Jinping committed a global development infrastructure strategy to over 150 countries and organizations worldwide. With over 2,700 infrastructural projects, the Belt and Road Initiative has facilitated policies, education, trade, technology, and so much more to address the global disparities in the world's development. And renewable energy, of course, is not an exclusion. Evidently, in 2023, the Belt and Road Initiative has caused more than 21% of coal infrastructures to decline. But this success doesn't only stem from China's ability in technology, it also stems from China's resonance with developing states. Therefore, with its rapid growth as an environmental role model, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative should lead the renewable energy transition for three primary rationales. First, China's alignment with developing states. Second, China's emphasis on the Energy Trilemma Index. And third, China's reliable economic support. Initially, China represents a developing country as their structural vulnerabilities match. From high rural-urban divides to low human development indexes, these aspects are highly susceptible to worsen by the renewable energy transition. But auspiciously, it didn't in China. Instead, conditions grew better. So you might think, what caused this? China's Renewable Energy Agency has introduced a feed-in tariff mechanism and capacity building mechanism. While capacity building refers to giving training, education, and workforce development, their feed-in tariffs offer cost-based compensation to renewable energy producers, therefore ensuring financial stability and the lack of financial strains for renewable energy projects even outside the urban areas of the region. This showcases China's commitment to equitable development. And lucky for us, China extends to expand this mandate to a lot of other countries, for developing countries, through the facilitation of education, trade facilities, and financial integration for renewable energy development. And all these efforts have borne fruit. For instance, Laos's high-speed railway, established through collaboration, again, with China, and powered by renewable energy, has led Laos to increase its renewable energy sector to 70% and has created various life-changing opportunities for their people, such as in jobs and etc. So, the success of these railway projects can reflect the transformative impact in the Belt and Road Initiative in driving renewable energy transition for developing countries. Secondly, the Belt and Road's leadership in renewable energy transition emphasizes the Energy Trilemma Index. Now, what is this? We cover three dimensions. First, energy sustainability, which aims to provide countries with energy by avoiding and mitigating all environmental harms. Next, energy equity, a country's ability to have equitable access of energy that is accessible, abundant, and reliable for all. And finally, energy security, which means a state can have reliable support and reliable support and supply for current and future demands of energy. But one of this is really complex. And if a country has all three of these energy dimensions, they will be said to have a healthy energy system. But all of these have grown increasingly complicated and controversial, therefore making it difficult to focus on even one of the above. Well, notably, renewable energy in the complexity of energy equity, one needs to understand how exactly energy is distributed. The diffusion from energy includes a connecting network of grids with power lines, batteries, substations, storages, so much more to power homes, businesses, and other facilities like schools. But without the requisite infrastructure and technologies, developing countries find this so hard. Even some foreign aids would tend to ignore the assessment of demand and concentration for this, especially the required infrastructures and its inclusive regulatory frameworks. So while various foreign aids do provide funds for developing countries, its project performance is assessed by foreign technical experts, akin to an architect who is designing the blueprint of a city without ever setting foot on its landscape. The architect would not know what type of ground there was and what type of facilities that the community needs. This highlights the importance of adopting a subjective and collaborative approach to the renewable energy transition, one which the Belt and Road facilitates, akin to an architect that understands the unique dynamics of their region. So, in contrast, although the Belt and Road Initiative is a project development initiative, its energy engagement across the supply chain is immeasurable as they involve all sorts of stakeholders, including governments, academia in research and development, geological experts, private firms, and of course, finance and multilateral organizations for the renewable energy transition. National reports and market demands are actively used to voice where the best performing renewable energy technologies should emerge in stability, availability, and productivity. With this, the Belt and Road Initiative always ensures that it only emphasizes the efficient and necessary power plants that could be used to foster one's economic growth. For instance, Belt and Road initiated countries such as Peru has established this through the Chinese Southern Power Grid International Company and has eventually led to provide successful subsidies and market opportunities for a just and accelerated renewable energy transition. Therefore, China's engagement in the Belt and Road Initiative does foster number one, energy equity. Additionally, the Belt and Road Initiative also fosters the remaining aspects of the Energy Trilemma Index, which are energy sustainability and energy security. While energy sustainability itself is achieved through the renewable energy transition, the question of whether a state can utilize renewable energies or not would securely depend on its technology. In China's technology, that could address both the vulnerabilities and the advancements in renewable energy becomes a perfect match. Evidently, in this world we are on now, China has held more than 50% of global renewable energy. Thus, through other of their efforts, such as the Go-Wind Agreement, implanting a lot of solar energy in Brazil, or even collaboration with Indonesia's Tria Surya Mas Energy and various other energy sectors, China continues to showcase their development that could underscore its leadership in renewable energy 2, security, and 3, sustainability on a global scale. With this, the Energy Trilemma Index is covered. Thirdly, renewable energy transition under the Belt and Road Initiative does foster economic performance, productivity, and proliferation, as various foreign aids actually do offer monetary support through loans. a lot of developing countries are still hesitant to transition to renewable energy because they are afraid they cannot pay back these loans as renewable energy transition is very expensive. So, those that do often end up stuck in a debt trap, leading to consequences of dependencies and thus counter initiating the renewable energy transition. However, China offers all various debt protective measures that instead incentivize these countries to transition to renewable energy, including debt equity and debt policy swaps. For instance, notably, instead of repaying the debtor in cash, the debtor country may offer ownership stakes or shares in state owned enterprises, infrastructure projects, policy amendments, natural resource assets, trade agreements, investments, or other diplomatic alignments that are negotiated and could benefit both the debtor and China. For example, China's Gowind Agreement has established incentivized major wind turbines in Brazil and put forth collaboration with Indonesia's solar producers as aforementioned, which led to various amounts of projects. Through establishing all those protective measures, the Belt and Road Initiative would further foster collaborations instead of dependency. Next, as private firms predominantly comprise Belt and Road Initiative investments, blended financing serves as the fertile soil from which economic productivity blooms. As private firms are incentivized to maximize returns and avoid financial strains on their projects, we know businesses want to make profit. Their productive action would be requisite. Therefore, as private sectors monitor, manage, and develop their products, this would result in various cost savings and performance gains. Moreover, since China develops the underdeveloped aspects of a host country in terms of a debt equity swap, then by the time China has finished this period, a host country may already improve their capacities in renewable energy transition. China's aid in fostering this often collaborates with the Renewable Energy Country Attractiveness Index, one that fosters a country's environmental, political, social, regulatory, technological, and infrastructural costs for a renewable energy transition. Evidently, various countries have benefited from this, and now 4 out of the 15 countries in the top renewable energy country attractiveness index are developing countries. Finally, this ensures how Belt and Road Initiative provides economic productivity. But what about proliferation that looks more on the equitable side? The Belt and Road Initiative endorses economic proliferation in the renewable energy transition through facilitating various opportunities for local and international market growth. Internationally, China has invited various foreign companies like the Italian energy company Enel to supply their supply chains. Like, the Chinese Southern Power Grid has worked together with Enel, and now Enel has an exposure to over 150 countries and organizations worldwide. Notably, in the local sectors too, China has facilitated various economic opportunities in project development with various workforce training, education, and also opening various employment sectors, which has led to significant economic growth. Evidently, some developing countries, like Vietnam or Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, has established the renewable energy transition through the Belt and Road Initiative as part of their national plan to grow national gross domestic product. Therefore, the economic growth under Belt and Road Initiative fosters economic performance, productivity, proliferation, and productivity within economic participating parties' performance. However, skepticism surrounding the Belt and Road Initiative often appear. A lot of people claim that the Belt and Road Initiative only aims to foster geopolitical dominance rather than actually facilitating inclusive development. However, China says it's all above board, as they only play with the host country's rules and help out when needed, also known as demanded. For instance, there was a significant allegation on China's project in Sri Lanka, which was a port, right? But the Sri Lankan government, not only one, said that they initiated this port, but they too has also reported that the port made a viable business model and three, saved Sri Lanka from a debt trap. Therefore, this showcases that the Belt and Road Initiative only addresses the structural vulnerabilities and not an aim to geopolitical dominance through their Belt and Road Initiative. But secondly, as the Belt and Road Initiative depend on men from rural areas who are prepared to work for merger salaries, various people think that this can open doors to human rights violations such as debt bondage, excessive overtime, or unprepared labor circumstances. Some people even claim that the Belt and Road Initiative is forced labor upon the International Labor Organization standards. But that is an overstatement. Turns out, all this time, they have been ignoring that China has endorsed not only safeguarding policies within their Belt and Road Initiative, but also they have oversight from various human rights organizations and the host country themselves. And this leads to us also having to remember that the International Labor Organization is not as relevant when determining state-imposed work, which means that they do not consider the relative and preferable conditions rather than unemployment in a certain state. Therefore, the Belt and Road Initiative still stands in justice, both on economic and humanitarian scales. With that, China offers a pathway for developing countries to transition to renewable energy. We have seen that China, with its historical, economic, and sympathetic success, underscores its success in tailoring projects to suit developing countries' needs, coupled with its emphasis on the Energy Trilemma Index, is now a productive, proliferating, and protective force in the renewable energy transition. So, bear with me for a while here. While our world's survival hinges on this transition to renewable energy, let us come together and set aside our differences. Because when environmental justice calls for only one answer, let us come together and ensure a renewable energy transition where no one is left behind. Thank you. My name is Scarlett.
Thank you, Scarlett. You did a great job, even though the timer kept going blank. I think my laptop may be overheating over here. So your time was good. So let's go ahead and start the Q&A session. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Kim.
Hi, Mr.
Hello, Scarlett. You okay?
Yeah.
Right. I think it's just coincidence that your topic is red flag and both of us are wearing red.
Oh, that's interesting.
But very good. By the way, Mr. Wade, this is also the topic of my thesis during college, so I picked it because I really liked it. Okay. First of all, you cannot talk about the world economy now without talking about China, right? And you mentioned that the goal of China with this BRI is not just geopolitical dominance, but inclusive development. But I want to ask you, are you aware that China and Indonesia are having a spat and a dispute in our territories in Sumatra?
Yes, I am aware.
Are you also aware that China have been caught spying on our government as well as other African government who also happens to become part of BRI?
Yes, I am aware.
Okay, so my question is, why should we Indonesia trust China? I mean, it sounds like a red flag boyfriend. I mean, at one point you said, hey, I love you, here's some money for you. But at other side, at the same time, they also spy on you and intrude on your territories. So say you're talking to Indonesian president. How are you going to convince that this is legit, this is not that geopolitical dominance project, and so on and so forth?
Right. Thank you for that amazing point, mister. First, I don't feel like I have to actually address the Indonesian government because Pak Jokowi stated himself that they are fostering so many other Belt and Road Initiative projects based on Indonesia's will. So, one thing for sure is that Indonesia, China, and let's say the Western world has all been in like one kind of stance fight, right? But Indonesia supplies most of its military support and economic support from these two diverse worlds. So if eventually, like in your worst case scenario, the Chinese dominance takes over Indonesia, we still have like Western military, which has an our presence to support that. But on the other hand, spying and all of those other circumstances is not something that is uncommon in this world. Like we know ourselves that Western countries also have various military bases around. I would have to say that sadly this is inevitable. But as long as we've seen like now Indonesia is building a $100 million solar farm in this region of like Java under the Belt and Road Initiative. And we have recently established the Wush train, and China, on the third point, is also like really protecting their own economy and everything at this point. There is too little risk for China to eventually blow up a risk that makes them not trustable.
Okay, thank you. Great answer. But I still want to dig deep on it. Indonesia demands it, therefore it's not a huge issue, right? But here's the thing about Indonesian government and pretty much all democratic governments. You are becoming a president because people voted on you. People vote on you because you can deliver promises. Therefore, the allegation is that yes, Indonesian government demands it, Sri Lankan government demands it, African government demands it, not because they want to have this renewables energy going on, but it is electoral interests. They want to prove to the people that, hey, vote for me. Look, I built trains, I built bridges, I built what do you call it, power plants. Questions about debts and everything, that's a problem for the president on the next term, which will end in 5 years. So how are you going to how are you going to respond to that allegation? Like, of course, people are going to demand it. They need to have election and they need someone to vote for them.
All right. So your question is that considering that the consequences of these BRI projects are only going to manifest in the next presidential system, it's just something that they just want. Oh, let's build something, yeah, so that we can get votes. Well, in that case, then I have to argue that it's gonna be the same case for all multilateral aids, like Bretton Woods Institutes, which is the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, or even the Belt and Road Initiative. Both of them will foster project development, right? But what's interesting about this is it's really smart for the governments to use BRI to facilitate to facilitate their votes, because the Belt and Road Initiative again involves all of the local sectors, including like when they want to build a solar plant in Java, they consult the locals nearby, asking them even like about their water irrigation, about like their temperature, about which place would be most preferable for that. So while the Belt and Road Initiative, sorry, I'm sorry that you have not mentioned previously like the problems that would arise in the next electoral system. But the way I see it, it's still gonna be the same with any other foreign aid, and it's smart to pick the BRI.
Clever. All right. So it's smart to pick the BRI and everything. But here's what I get. This is Chinese money, Chinese expertise plus locals, cooperation and everything. Doesn't that makes our economy beholden towards the health of Chinese economy? So, for example, if Chinese economy slowed down and they said, sorry, we can't send more money because we have to focus on ourselves, then the project would have to get abandoned. My question is, why is China wants to have, this is our project? Why don't China says, hey, America, Europe, let's work together and make our combined Belt and Road? Because this is flagship China's project. Xi Jinping said it. We want to revive the Silk Road, but out of political sensitivities, he renamed it BRI, not One Belt, One Road. So how can Indonesia or any countries, Africa, have this economic resilience so they don't just depend on this one economy in particular? Like what's the insurance? And why should America, for example, wants to step in if someone's failed to pay for it, and so on and so forth?
All right, thank you. While I did said that China have to lead the developing states' renewable energy transition, I'm not saying that I want to cut off other sorts of funds. Like in my paper, I wrote that there's the Green Development Fund, which is from the Bretton Woods Institute mostly, and from other developed countries. Moreover, actually, the Belt and Road Initiative has opened its shares and like investment shares and private companies. So even the Italian company, like I said before, Enel, could be facilitated within the Belt and Road Initiative. It grew in 2022 from 29% to 59% being held by private enterprises. So, seeing this and these private enterprises are foreign, I don't think that it's going to be a big issue for us to depend on the BRI because it's stable.
All right. Actually, I have more question, but Mr. Wade, how much time do I have left? Okay. Okay. I like your topic, and that's why I kept on asking and everything. Okay. Renewables energy, of course, need raw materials, right? For example, but batteries, you need nickels. This electricity, you need chips, and etc. It's limited. Not everyone has it. So Chinese companies are going to have to race to the bottom to secure as many resources as possible. That's what happens in Sulawesi, where they built factories, and I'm sorry to say, they kind of like neglect the environmental concern, because what they said, it's better for us to get here before the Americans or the Europeans got it. Okay? And once again, the locals, because they felt pressured, they accept the Chinese. But bottom line, the question is, they are going to have to race with countries to secure these resources, right? How should China and America and Europe basically calms down and says, guys, let's not rush to get this. Let's set up a rules. But how is that going to be working? Because once again, despite you involved Italian companies, for example, Bretton Woods, nobody considers that American made. Nobody considers that British made. It's the Allies made. But the image of the BRI is still Chinese made, right? So how does China get everyone to sit down, calm down, and why should they believe in China again?
All right. This is where it gets interesting in like debt equity swaps, because China has like fostered a lot of development in, for example, in these African or like in these countries that actually hold significant amount of natural resources, and they've been giving it to China in exchange for development so that they don't have to pay too much in cash. This is evident in Congo as China. Yes, in Congo as China does mine the cobalt over there, and about that, I don't think it's a significant issue because number one, China already holds more than 90% of solar energy and 50% of wind energy, meaning that they have secured everything. But the Bretton Woods Institute, on the other hand, a lot of Western developed technologies are operating in like the Western world or the more developed world. That's why, as I see a lot of like European and companies from the USA operate in the Western side of the world, I thought that developing countries could use some help too. That's why I picked China for this.
Okay.
Yeah, let's move on to Miss Denise now.
Okay, sure.
I want to follow up on that question, and it's a similar theme because as a Westerner watching China have all of this strong interest in developing these countries, it's easy for it to sound great. Oh, we want to help all the people in the world that are in less developed countries. But what it sounds like to me is just energy colonism. You know what I'm saying? It just looks like it's colonism coming from China rather than from the West now. And they are raping the land of the places that they go into, and they're taking those resources under the guise of a debt equity swap. But really, these countries are now beholden to China. It is blackmail. We've loaned you all this money, and therefore now we need this X amount of supplies and natural materials and resources. Not only that, I know from visiting other countries, I've had conversation with a local who's mentioned the China Belt and Road Initiative, and that many of the workers are not local workers. They are exported from other countries like Malaysia, and they're sent to work on China's behalf because the excuse is, well, the local workers don't have the technical expertise. So in other words, it's colonization. So how do you argue against that?
All right. Thank you, Miss, for that excellent question. I do recognize that there are heavy debts on the Belt and Road Initiative. But I think there are two things that we have to clarify here. Not all of China's debts eventually manifest in like debt equity or debt policy swaps. That's why I think it's very important for like a developing country, like if they want to borrow aid from China, then they have to first consider like, do we have enough money or would we be willing to give in a debt equity or debt policy swaps? That's number one. But like number two, also you mentioned about, sorry, wait, give me time to recall. Um, oh yeah, about the workers. Well, first of all, China actually does facilitate these workers not only from like the foreigners, but also from the local side. But this may not manifest when they're like building the technology or whatsoever, because of course there's a lot of pressure upon the Belt and Road Initiative to actually get it done right. But if we take examples like the Tubaguyus hydropower plant in
Yeah.
Uzbekistan, like the locals are actually given education and training about how to manage and operate these facilities after the facility was established so that they can continue independently and on their
Okay.
own.
Yeah.
What's strategic for this for China is that if other countries can already develop their renewable energy market,
Right.
China can be the leader in the renewable energy market without facilitating like every single aspect of it.
Right. Which I think is their goal. They're looking to, I mean, it sounds really nice and noble to say we want to help these other countries, but let's be real. What China, you don't give anything away for free. You
Yeah.
have a vested interest in it. And so China is competing to be a globally dominant economy in the world, and they're trying to dominate, let's face it, the United States economy, which has for a long time been the most globally dominant economy. So you've got this geopolitical economic tension at play. Now, obviously, as an American, I'm like, well, I don't want that, right? But if I'm thinking objectively, not as an American, I totally see how other countries like Indonesia have greatly benefited from this system. So it just needs to be the kind of thing where everybody goes into it with their eyes wide open, recognizing that you don't get anything for free. There's going to be a cost.
Mhm.
So I think that's an argument that you've made. And no matter what you do, there's going to be that cost with no
Yeah.
matter who you interact with. So let me go back to something that's actually more foundational, which also as an American, is a whole population of people and a whole group of people that actually don't believe climate change is a thing. They think that climate change is something that has been a created idea in order to promote this whole renewable energy market as an economic incentive. In other words, is the climate warming? Yes. Is that the result of fossil fuels? Maybe. Maybe not. We've seen the climate has been warming for hundreds and thousands of years. Glacial melt happened long before the Industrial Revolution. So how do we know that climate change is really going to be solved by just creating an entire new market of energy? And aren't there just as many consequences and damages to the environment? What happens to all these batteries in the e-cars? They're going to have to go somewhere. How do they degrade? What happens to those? So how are we really solving the climate crisis with renewable energy?
Interesting question, Miss. Thank you. So, number one, if it's a question if fossil fuels are the main cause of climate change, the world again has come together under the 2015 Paris Agreement. Short to say, there are so much more, like like under the United Nations Environmental Program, and everyone has agreed that it's a result of fossil fuels. But your question was, sorry, like how do we?
Yeah, I really am saying, are we sure that fossil fuels are the problem? For instance, a lot of climate change
Alright.
is happening from people burning their sugarcane crops or
Mhm.
burning down large patches of the forest because they want to plant corn, because corn is now something we need for gasoline so that it's not coming from a fossil fuel. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, are we actually solving the climate crisis by investing in this renewable energy market?
Right, Miss. So about fossil fuels, I don't remember the exact statistics, but around 80% of climate change assessed by like scientists are said to be like caused by fossil fuels, may it be in transportation or energy generation.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Do you have that data? That's interesting. Great. Okay. One more quick thing is So one other thing that I've seen, actually, we've noticed specifically in our state of Texas. So I think it was last Christmas, they had one of the coldest cold snaps in the history of the state of Texas, because Texas, if you look on a map, it's kind of close to the equator. It's not really meant to be super, super cold. Well, they had this enormous cold snap, and the electrical grid could not manage the amount of usage that was needed to provide energy for that. And so part of it was because they've shifted to renewable energy. They had all this solar and wind farm power, and they weren't really able to harness it and utilize it. So how do we avoid those kind of catastrophes?
All right, this is actually one pressing point in the Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, it's technology. But to give everyone here like a sort of background context, we say like solar energy or wind energy, that means that would depend on like whether the sun is out or like there's wind, right?
Correct.
Yes. And this works because like there's and a lot of like countries have tried to store this in batteries.
Right.
But the problem is batteries transfer from, if Mr. Christian is here, I'm so sorry if I'm wrong, from direct current to alternative current. And then when the energy is demanded, they try to transition it back from alternative current to direct current.
Right.
But this process is often like inefficient.
Yeah.
That's why we look at the developing technologies from China, which they have now begun to invest and like develop firm renewable energy. Now, what is firm renewable energy? It operates through a battery that's like just direct current, and it doesn't transition to alternative current. So
I
through
see.
a lot of like these Chinese technologies, which by the way, these are only available in China. So they're trying to bring it out more now. It's gonna be the solution.
I love that. I'm going to do one more final question. I was sitting on a plane next to a guy from China. He's from China. And we were chatting, and I was like, hey, what are you doing in Indonesia? And he said, oh, I'm here to sell CCTVs, but I'm actually Chinese, and I'm working for this firm here, trying to promote this Chinese company. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And so we started talking about China and their economy and yada, yada. And he said two things. One, the Chinese economy is not doing as well as the world thinks. Two, he said, the e-car, the electric car market is a complete and total scam that the Chinese are using to, they're just scamming the world. This is a Chinese citizen saying that. How do you respond to that?
All right, so the cars and
their economy is not as strong.
and their economy. All right, Mister, give me like quite some time to answer this. So it's true that China is still a developing country, number one. Number two, their people still face inadequate employment opportunities. They still don't have proper like food to give out. So everything is bashing on Chinese economy. But what's interesting is that they have like their separate budget for the Belt and Road Initiative, which now again doesn't come from the Chinese government, but 59% of it comes from other other countries other countries' private firms that funds this. So the reliability of China's economic performance can be justified. But also for the electric cars, like if we listen to like Jaden's thesis last time, it's about the exploitative like mining in like cobalt and everything.
Yeah.
Well, as that is separate from the Belt and Road Initiative, it's not really in my scope of research.
Sure.
The Chinese have actually reduced their greenhouse gas emissions, and it's evident through the use of the electric vehicles in Shanghai.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why he said it was a scam.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. That's excellent data.
I have one quick short question and then we're done. Renewable energy, isn't China one of the most polluting countries on the planet? Why would we trust them for renewable energy?
Okay, I love your question, mister. I've been waiting for that. So, if we look at Chinese population, that's gonna total more than the US and Europe and Japan's population all combined. So, and secondly, China is also a developing country, which when USA and with other Western countries are developing, they have also emitted their emissions, a lot of emissions. So one reason China can say is it's our turn now. You guys had your time and we want to use and kind of exploit these emissions, right? But China realized that that's not going to be the future economic market. So they stopped doing that and they transitioned to renewable energy. If we look at the statistics, China's emission per capita, which means emission per person, is way lower than the United States. And if I'm not mistaken, it ranks in like the 15th of the world. So its emissions are not that strong, are not as strong as we think. But other than that, China uses like a peak strategy to peak their carbon emissions by around 2030 and go fully neutral by 2050. And they were like one of the first countries to ever sign this pledge. So given that, and seeing the technological dominance, although China is like still moving, they're moving forward with us, other developing countries. And this is a very important sector because it makes China relatable to these developing countries so they can assess all the harms together.
Okay, good job, Scarlett. You endured the interrogation. Very good.
Your thesis, mister?
Really?
Well done. Well done.
Thank you,
You
Miss.
did a good job. You defended.
Okay.